Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my spoiler-free review for Baldur's Gate 3. Now before we get into how incredible this one-of-a-kind game is, what I love about it, and why this is very much a contender for not only Game of the Year, but possibly best RPG ever made, let's first set the stage. Baldur's Gate has a very long legacy and was originally a tabletop campaign created in 1967, which was later brought to Dungeons & Dragons, set in the Forgotten Realms in 1987. 11 years later in 1998, the first digital Baldur's Gate video game was released and developed by BioWare, including several expansions and sequels, which were later remastered in 2012 and 2013 for BG2. Larian Studios, headed up by the larger-than-life legend that is Sven, managed to obtain the Baldur's Gate license in 2017 following the successful release of Divinity Original Sin 2, which remains one of the greatest RPGs of all time and certainly my favourite RPG to date, at least until Baldur's Gate 3 came along. Following 6 years of development, Larian have created what I can only call a masterpiece of storytelling, using their adapted Divinity Original Sin 2 engine, which in my opinion perfectly captures the essence and soul of tabletop D&D, with a heavy emphasis on dice rolls, skill checks, questing, narrative and dungeon crawling. Baldur's Gate 3 is set 120 years beyond the events of Baldur's Gate 2, Shadows of Arm, and starts by subjecting your character and many other characters who were abducted from Baldur's Gate to a mind flayer tadpole. But not all is as it seems. The discovery and journey is yours to take, and believe me when I say it can go a great many ways. With the setting and intro out of the way, let's talk about what makes this game so goddamn good, and why I would consider it as one of the greats. Starting with choice. Larian have crafted a world where your choices really do matter, and the decisions you make will have far-reaching impacts on your character stories, dialogue options, combat encounters, story progression, and if anyone has ever played Deus Ex or Mass Effect, you'll know what I mean when I say your choices have consequences. There is no right or wrong way to play Baldur's Gate 3, only your way. For me, I started out as a paladin and then re-rolled as a tiefling warlock, with a Dark Urge backstory. What a difference that made. Whilst there were similarities to both runs, by the time I had reached Act 2, the story arc could not have been more different, and I could already feel the weight of my choices. Not only do your decisions carry an impact, your character, class, background, and even the race that you play can influence how other characters perceive you and interact with you. It really does feel like Larian have thought of everything. Something I really feel I have to get out there early is the value for money you get with this game. As of the time of recording here in the UK, the price of Baldur's Gate 3 sits at £50, which is a decent chunk of change, I'll grant you that. However, when you consider I have put in over 100 hours into BG3 at this point, and have not even been to Baldur's Gate yet, that should give you an idea of just how massive this game is in terms of scale. Think Assassin's Creed Valhalla as an example. Judging by where I think I am in the game, and how much more there is to do in Act 2 alone, I reckon this game will see at least another 100 hours before completion. Now granted, I am very much taking my time with this game, but still this isn't exactly a completionist run. Compare that to Diablo 4, a game that came with a £70 price point for the standard edition alone. Had a story-driven game time of around 10 hours, yes, okay, there are 5 classes, so let's say for the sake of generosity, 60 hours of story-driven content where your choices have no impact, versus Baldur's Gate 3, where your choices have massive impact, a story-driven game time of say 150 hours easily. And then consider that is with a single class out of 12. Many different ways to go, and no doubt with many different endings. Well, I don't need to do any maths to work out that that kind of value for money is extremely hard to come by in this day and age. Moving on to characters next, and oh boy are the characters fun, deep and interesting. Every single character you come across is fully voice acted and animated, each with their own unique backstories, quirks and dialogue. Without going into specifics and to avoid spoilers, I will just say this. There are hidden characters out there that, depending on your choices, may very well lead them to join your party, with some very interesting backstories to boot. What's more is that they are all able to be moulded exactly as you see fit. You can even change their classes if you really want. Gale is a barbarian, you say? Sign me up. Each of your party characters have an attitude towards you, and certain choices can lead to some characters leaving your side forever. I personally found it rather interesting to see which characters backed my plays versus those who didn't. It's certainly made for some interesting campsite stories and interactions. We can't talk about Baldur's Gate 3 without mentioning the combat. It is a turn-based tactical battlefield which mirrors Divinity Original Sin 2, but with D&D rules and background dice rolls. There are so many abilities and spells in this game which leads to many ways to approach each combat encounter. Grease and barrels plus fire is always good for a laugh. The combat is a bit slower paced than similar combat in other games, but it's also more strategic and tactical. It benefits players with good positioning and those that use high ground and the environment to their advantage, but there are 3 difficulty settings which can be tweaked on the fly. So if you are having a tough time and just want to clear an area, you can always lower the difficulty, and likewise if you're finding things a little bit too easy, you can just turn the difficulty up a notch. What's not to like? A review wouldn't be complete if we didn't discuss the bad and the issues within this game. Whilst a lot of the bugs have already been weeded out, there are a few that my friends have encountered, not me personally, that are worth mentioning as it has hampered their enjoyment of the game. The first bug is where the UI just breaks or bugs out. This appears to be caused where multiple actions are queued up, and may very well be linked with Lae'zel specifically. The other bug that we have come across, again not me personally, is a technical issue with save files. For some reason, and likely due to assets not loading in properly, a friend of mine has had consistent issues with save files not working. The only fix was to try and find a good save, which then loaded in the good assets, and then load the bad save afterwards. Bit of an odd one, but hopefully there will be a fix for that one soon, as it does sound like a royal pain in the ass. Anywho, that will right about do it for me and this somewhat short review. I would love to know your thoughts about this game, so please do pop your comments in the section below. And if you want a more in-depth review in the future, maybe once I've completed the game, again please let me know and I shall make it happen. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for the Google gods. And I shall see you in the next video.